Welcome to Fostering Solutions, a podcast that uplifts people and enterprises making positive impact in communities around the world. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Foster. On this special episode of Fostering Solutions, where I'm doing this Maximizing with Michelle series, Jessica Hudson is the guest today. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Great seeing you. So tell the audience about yourself. Who is Jessica Hudson? Something outside of the typical resume stuff. Just, who is Jessica?
It's funny because I think to know who I am now, you have to understand where I came from. I loved that part in the book, getting to understand where Michelle came from. For me, I tell people all the time I was just a little girl raised up a good old West Virginia holler, who had a lot of goals and dreams, but was raised by parents who, my dad was a hardworking union man, and my mother gave up a career to be attentive to the needs of my sister and I. She was that at school every day, popping the popcorn, baking the cupcakes, tutoring, taking, all of us and other students as well to sporting events and things like that. So, and I grew up in a family where if we saw a disabled motorist, now, of course, this was before we had cell phones, so my dad would stop and help everyone.
Oh, wow.
My mother was always the one making us aware of needs in the community, taking us to the store to pick out the canned goods when, our church was doing a food drive or another organization was doing a canned food drive. And so, I think growing up in that type of family where we were just so aware of, the needs in our community and really grew up understanding what it was like to help people. I think that's really a big part of who I am today. But also from the book that I found interesting, I too had a childhood or part of my upbringing that centered around science. And
Good.
I started a science fair project in the 9th grade, attending DuPont High School.
Okay.
Of course, we were very close to DuPont plant. And this was a special project because there was a team of us, 3, and they actually let us into the plant to do our research.
Nice.
And so it was there that I learned what, being a part of a supportive community was about, having partners. And then that science fair project took me to 4 international level science fair competitions, a 2nd place and 3rd place award in the world.
Oh my gosh, that's like hardcore.
It spent a lot of time in a lab all through high school. An award from 2 awards from the CIA and an award from every branch of the military. And it was there that I learned Jessica, the scientist in the military, could gain rank really quickly. So it was discussed potentially West Point, and coming from a family of veterans, that was really of interest to me until my senior year in high school, and I found out I was a type 1 juvenile diabetic and therefore unable to, serve in the military.
Unfortunate. Who knows where you would have been?
Who knows? But it was that then, led me to so much more than I think the military could have ever provided me. And so, still have a love of science. Through my career, I became or previous career, became a certified NASA educator. So I'm still a stargazer. Still love to
still
do
a
that.
Science nerd. And
still a science nerd.
I always say I'm a nerd undercover.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And so, I think all of those things really shaped me. It's hard for people to understand this now. I wasn't a talker, very introverted, until suddenly I'm standing as a high school sophomore in front of PhD level scientists trying to prove my worth and tell them about my research. And there's something about that pulls you out of your shell a bit. So, I'm so grateful for those things in my life that really made me who I am today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And today you are the executive director of Dress for Success of the
River Cities. Yes.
So how did you talk about your journey to this position in the nonprofit sector?
So, of course, I mentioned West Point was out of the picture. So suddenly, as a high school senior with my whole life figured out, I thought, well, what am I supposed to do now? So I did the only thing I'd really ever known, and that was I decided to be a teacher. I'd always had a lot of
My
of
mom
respect.
was a teacher. Yeah, got family members who were teachers. Yeah,
just a lot of respect for teachers. And in fact, one of my senior superlatives was teacher's pet, because I was always bringing them gifts, not because I needed to get a better grade, but because I respected what they did.
Right.
And I thought, well, what better subject to teach but science? And so, majored in biology and then general science education, went on to do my student teaching, had the worst experience of my life, and thought the formal classroom is not for me. And so then it's, you're stuck with this feeling of, what do I do? And so it was as simple as responding to an ad in a paper that led me to my first nonprofit job with Girl Scouts of Black Diamond Council.
Okay.
I was working with a grant-funded program doing Girl Scouting in all of the low-income housing communities. And then very quickly, I think they scooped me up into a full-time position, and over several years became the director of program services for a council serving 50,000 girls a year.
Wow.
And I just loved it. But through that position, I was still able to, I wrote all of our science curriculum. We did STEAM. Oh my gosh, this shows how old I am. STEAM wasn't even a thing then. I don't think. We were still very much STEM. And so, but got the opportunity to become a certified NASA educator. That was through that position. And then realized I was interested in resource development. And so left after about 5 years and went to Habitat for Humanity, and again was afforded an incredible opportunity. Habitat International received funding from the Lilly Pharmaceuticals Foundation, Eli Lilly. And basically I was a part of the inaugural class of Habitat for Humanity fundraising folks who got to receive my certification in fundraising management through IUPUI. And so again, another opportunity to be able
go ahead and spell that out. Say that what that acronym is for the listeners.
It's
I know it's pretty big.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis.
That's kind of where that's where
the School of Philanthropy.
That's the focus of that. That's the School of Philanthropy in the U.S. Absolutely.
And it's incredible. That was an incredible opportunity. We traveled around the country actually taking classes, not actually on the Indianapolis campus. And so that gave me another opportunity just to get to see different parts of the country and understand how fundraising is a little different there. So then armed with what was, program experience and then resource development experience. And then between the two of those, volunteer management and recruitment, really thought I was destined for an executive director position, or, that was very much.
You were being groomed, it sounded like.
Very much so. And so it felt like that was the next step for me, because I could, in that position, really get to do a little bit of everything I loved and had learned through the years. And then, one day received a call from maybe listeners will know, but maybe they're not from this area and won't know, but our good friend Amanda Barron, who is a news anchor, and she actually sat on the board of Dress for Success River Cities at the time, and she said, "We have a job for you." And I said, "I have a job and I love that job." And she said, "I know, but we need you." And so went through the interview process and learned after taking the job just why they needed me. But, that 20, I think I told you before we started here, 22 years now in the nonprofit sector, and wouldn't trade that for the world.
Awesome. Quite a journey. So this podcast is about maximizing impact. What does that mean to you, that term, maximizing impact? What does that mean to you?
So, our the very wise Theodore Roosevelt says, doing what you can with what you have where you are. Mm-hmm. And so I think it starts with that. Mm-hmm. I think it starts with identifying a need and initially doing what you can. But then it takes, I think, being able to go a step further and be a visionary and seeing what can be. Taking risks, I think.
It's like entrepreneurial.
It is.
Entrepreneurial, isn't it? I always say it's like people don't realize it's social entrepreneurship.
Well, it's funny because everything about my nonprofit journey, I feel like every great thing I learned was when I was with the Girl Scouts. And every time I say something, when I was with the Girl Scouts, and so somebody will say, "Well, why did you ever leave that organization?" Mm-hmm. Well, life is about risks. I could have stayed there and been very comfortable, but I wouldn't have gotten to be a part of the impact I've been a part of, or continue to learn the things I've continued to learn. And so it is very much about taking risks. And then, I think figuring out how to take the the resources you have in terms of people and being able to bring out the full potential in them. And that goes for staff and board of directors. So taking who you have around your table or on your bus and being able to bring out the best in them to achieve the best results.
Because you can't do it alone, can you? I think folks need to make sure that they get that you are not an island and you need help.
Very much.
Be sure to get the help that you need.
And
surround yourself with others.
That's probably the biggest thing I've learned through my career. If I could pinpoint the number one thing I've learned, that's it. Because I think we tend to, when we get it's very much a calling what we do, but when you get called into this work, you very much have an attitude of, I can do it all. And you learn very quickly that you can't.
You can't. And there may be a period where you're wearing a lot of hats, but that is not a sustainable type of situation.
It is not. It is not.
You need help.
But then also, realizing how you can, what resources you need to do the work that you're doing, and then how you need to grow those resources. What investments you need to make to be able to not only have the most impact, but be able to sustain that. And so, really for me, in a nutshell, that's what maximizing impact is, is.
So when you operate the Dress for Success program here it's now in Charleston, used to be in Huntington. And that's a part of a international. All righty. So what about I know it has talk about that program some, and talk about your impact, because I know it's not just clothes.
It's
not just clothes.
It is not.
Talk about what the elements of that program.
So Dress for Success as an organization started a little over 25 years ago. in the basement of a church, much like I think a lot of organizations
that
start.
was the organization I worked for, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's just, that's where a lot of them are born. And it was a young lady who was left an inheritance and thought, there's a need in my community. And this might be interesting for the audience to hear, but to this day, only 3% of the financial resources of charitable giving goes into organizations that impact women and girls.
Interesting.
And so there aren't a lot of organizations out there that do what we do. And she saw that, and she said, what can I do to help women have the tools and resources they need to not only feel empowered, but to achieve success. And, that really starts with being able to have a job, find a job and maintain that employment. And so with the help of some nuns in her community, she started the very first Dress for Success. And since that time, we've grown to about 150 locations in almost 30 countries around the world. Here in West Virginia, we were started by a group of students at Marshall University in a women's studies classroom who said, we need something like Dress for Success in our community. And so thank goodness for Dr. Sherry Smith, their professor, who said, you're right. And she actually rewrote the next semester's syllabus entirely around starting Dress for Success River Cities.
Wow.
And so, I often think about those students and if they're even aware, do they follow along? Are they even aware of the impact that...
How many years ago did you say that was?
16. We
16
celebrated
years ago.
16 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 16 years last September. So this year will be 17. And, since that time, we've impacted 5,000 women through
awesome.
13 counties in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky through our through our Huntington location. And then just recently in March, as you mentioned, we opened a location in Charleston, serving an additional 3 counties in West Virginia. But, as you mentioned, Dress for Success, as the name implies, we're about clothing. In fact, our Huntington location looks like a store, a boutique, and we have women stop all the time who want to shop. But the organization is all about 3 key things: clothing, confidence, and community. Providing the 3 C's, providing women with barriers to employment, and that can be
helping to remove those barriers. But providing women with barriers to employment with the clothing resources they need. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as, I just need a pair of black pants. And sometimes it's, I'm coming from a shelter and I have nothing. And so we work with them to really learn what needs they have. Do they have a resume? How confident do they feel in an interview? Can we do a mock interview with them to get them more comfortable? And then we're a workforce development organization. So we provide educational opportunities, workshops. We teach financial literacy. It's great that you're earning a paycheck now, but what do you do with that? How do you save? What does that look like? And then the community aspect of it, we bring women in who, I think a lot of our clients think that success is just something you're born with. You're either going to be successful or you're not. And they don't realize that that's something that most people aren't just born into. They have to work for that. And oftentimes it takes someone else helping to stir up those gifts within them, right?
And so we bring women in who want to, by volunteering and working with these women, help them understand their own story to success and be able to share that with them. So introducing them to a community that allows them opportunities to network, that helps them build their own personal, network, and encourages and supports them. And so it's through those 3 C's that we see, this incredible, these incredible outcomes and the impact that we're having.
That's wonderful. You've already mentioned my book, Maximizing Impact, Success Strategies for Dynamic Nonprofits. What chapters of that book really struck a nerve with you?
It's funny because I was really thankful for that book. You know, after having a few years in the sector, a lot of it was a reminder of, you know, things I've learned and known. And then there were some new things, but not to take away from what I feel is the meat and potatoes. You know, if you were going to start a nonprofit from the ground up, these are the things you should know. But what really resonated most with me were the chapters on self-care and gratitude.
That's right.
And I say that because I just came back from a week-long vacation, the first I've taken in many years. Now, self-care, you know, I'm really good about getting massages and my nails done and doing my skincare routine and trying to eat healthy and, you know, hiking and exercising and those sort of things. What I'm not good with is being able to take a break. And I think that's just so ingrained. And, you know, I read the chapter about, you know, a lot of things that happened in your life because you did that too. You're so dedicated. You know, your office feels like, or your organization feels like home.
It's a part of you.
And it's hard to separate.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's hard to separate yourself from that. And so, but, you know, I'm really fortunate to, because I too have seen relationships end because I've always made work more important somehow. And so I'm so fortunate to have such an incredible partner now. And he said, we are taking a vacation.
That's right.
And we did. And I didn't, this is the first time I think in my professional life that I went on vacation and didn't even as much as take a laptop.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even wear my Apple Watch where I could see email come through or anything. And, you know, I came back and I realized the buildings were still standing.
Life goes on.
And clients were still being served and the board was still, you know, they were still working and my staff were thriving and everything was great. And it almost hurt my feelings in a way.
But it shows that you're a great leader.
Well, but what it does...
If you can step away to take care of you and life goes on and the organization continues to thrive, that just shows your leadership.
It's just and so now I look at things. And so reading that chapter in the book, I thought, you know what, it's true. It is so important because, you know, we can't pour from an empty pitcher. We just can't do that. And I was very much at that point. And then looking at gratitude, you know, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and what we do. And while you feel grateful for that, a lot of my gratitude centers around things at work and not necessarily things in my life. And so a couple months ago, I was gifted a gratitude journal. And it was probably the best thing I've ever been given in my life. And so it's a 5-year journal. And every day you write something you're grateful for.
Wow.
And then the next year, on that same, you know, on each day you write something. And not only do you get to celebrate your gratitude for that, you get to celebrate what you were grateful for on that day the year before. And, you know, so I think realizing that I'm grateful for so much more than just what, you know, what my work provides is an important reminder. And I think, you know, that, so those 2 chapters, even though the book was just full of so much incredible information, but for me at this season in my life, I think that's what really resonated with me the most.
That's good. That's good. So, you know, you said you're at a certain season. You've been in the nonprofit sector for, you know, over 20 years. What do you know now that you wish you knew in that first position?
You know, it's incredible. I actually have gotten to work with someone who's now an adult, who was one of my Girl Scouts in that program, who's now a mother of 5, who's now, you know, and I think, and she introduced me to her kids, and she said, this was, let me think how she said it. Miss Jessica was a bomb Girl Scout leader. And I thought, woo, here I thought I was just a science nerd. But no, I think just, sometimes, and this goes back to not often, taking a break and things like that. I think we get so caught up in the day-to-day that, we don't think about the impact we've had. And I remember so many people in my lifetime, my parents included at one point, who said, why do you do that? And this was early on in my career, but why do you do this? You could have had, my 17-year-old tells people, she could have worked at NASA. And I said, okay, look, just because I'm a NASA educator doesn't mean like I'm ready to build space shuttles or anything. But I think that, really understanding the impact you have, and that you can still have, my parents always looked at but you work so many hours and you don't make much money. But for me, I can look back on 20 plus years of this and still come in contact with somebody that I've worked with in the past. And, just to know that all of that hard work and dedication is going to come back to you in ways that you could never imagine.
That's right. From sources you could never imagine.
Yes, exactly. And so I think, just knowing that all of that hard work and those long hours and I can't do this another day. And, being at Girl Scout camp in the middle of July and it's 98 degrees and you have 400 girls trying to canoe and you're like, this is not what I can't do this anymore. To look back over all these years and the impact, and just know that I get up every day and that's what I get to do. It's incredible. So
very fulfilling, isn't it?
Extremely.
Fulfilling.
Yeah.
So you earlier this year added a new location to the to Dress for Success. So how's that going? Are there other growth opportunities that you're working on?
Absolutely. So we were really fortunate a couple years ago. I think a lot of organizations or, United Way's organizations within the community do needs assessments. And we were looking at the potential of expanding, of course, pre-pandemic. And we were really fortunate to work with a group that was really a collaboration between Marshall University, West Virginia University, and the state, and primarily looking at ways to help women in the state move forward. And one of the things that they said was, what resources are out there for women, particularly like what Dress for Success provides. And so it was through that group, they said, let's just take a poll across the state and find out what's out there. Well, right there was our needs assessment, because we realized there's not a lot of support out there. There are a lot of clothing closets. There are a lot of, programs that provide for, clothing needs, but not many specifically that are geared toward the needs of women in the workforce, whether it be job interviews or helping them have what they need for an actual job, for employment. And so it became very evident to us that if those resources were going to exist, that we were going to have to look at expanding. And so that's when the Charleston location kind of hit the radar. I live in Charleston. I've commuted to Huntington for the last almost 8 years. And so, opening a location in my backyard was just incredible. But we have a lot of support in areas all over the state. And so I think looking at what we can do, whether that's through brick and mortar locations, additional locations, whether that be through a mobile boutique concept, being able to take our program on the road.
Hey, that's an idea.
We've actually piloted something like that, but of course, I think with given the geographical nature of our state, sometimes that's a little bit more difficult. But we've also, and being a part of an international organization opens you up to lots of programs and things that other affiliates have tried. And some of our affiliates, particularly during the pandemic, did what they call a pack and send program, where they have volunteers that curate outfits. And, we would get a call from someone in Martinsburg, let's say, and they would say, we need, to drive to Martinsburg. What does it take? 5.5 hours for us.
5.5 hours, yeah.
And so, to be able to put something in the mail and ship it to them that would have everything they would need for an interview or employment, I think is something that
sounds like a great opportunity.
A fantastic opportunity. So we're really looking at how we can strengthen our impact and do it in a smart way. But expanding to Charleston's definitely a good start. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about starting a nonprofit, whether it's similar to yours or just a community-based nonprofit? What advice would you give them?
You find when you've been in the sector a while, you get a lot of calls from people that think, well, maybe this person knows what they're talking about, and I should reach out to them for advice. And so I've gotten my fair share of those calls, and a lot of people, I think. And this is really how nonprofits are born. You see a need, but often what I found is that a lot of those people don't assess what's already out there. And they start an organization that there are already 10 others that are providing the same services. And really what that does then is make it more difficult for either that new organization to find funding, or it pulls away from those organizations who are already doing that work and doing it well. And so I think the biggest advice I would give is just see what's out there.
Assess the needs. I talk about that in the book, didn't I?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, assess the needs and maybe if it's not starting your own organization, but you see a need and you see something that another organization, similar organization is providing, see how you can partner with that organization. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we don't always have to recreate the wheel and start from scratch. Sometimes it's just saying, hey, I see this need that's not being met. How can I help you with that? Could be
supplementing their services or
So I mean that would be the biggest thing, just assessing the needs, see what's out there, and then figuring out how to move forward, whether that is on your own as a new organization or how you could work with an existing organization to help them expand their impact.
Absolutely. Oftentimes as we wind down our conversation, as you often work with women who may be at a low point in their lives. So as you look to the future, what gives you hope? For some of the women you work with, hope for your, the team that you work with at your organization. What gives you hope?
I think there's a bit of excitement in the air. I think we've had a lot of really influential women throughout the world, in our own, in our country, in our state, who have really, I think, opened the door for more opportunities for women. And so, and unfortunately, the pandemic, I think, has created a lot of opportunities, job opportunities, things that...
Where people can work anywhere now.
People can work anywhere.
Stay here and work.
And that's just incredible. So I think... with what we do, helping women find, create their own success story, that little girl from up a holler who wondered what she'd be one day, and here I am, all these years later. I think being able to, have a network of support of other women who can, be their champion, who can, be a part of we like to call our volunteers a success squad, having these women who can be a part of their success squad and mentor them and help them and guide them. And that doesn't just go for our clients. I think that's just women in general right now. There's really a positivity around women supporting other women finding their place in a boardroom. And so we're happy to kind of ride that wave as it is right now and provide those opportunities for women.
That's wonderful. And you partner with the women. I just thought of this, the Women's Leadership Summit. And we gave
130, I think, is the final
A
number.
lot of purses. So how did that work out? How did that...
If you knew how many I sat in the floor, and because, of course, sometimes with our women in recovery, there are certain items that they can't have. And so I was going through and kind of pulling out some of those items, mouthwash and things like that. And I just sat in the floor and cried. I thought there was so much excitement about women who donated a purse at this conference. And even the women who showed up to the conference and didn't bring one saw how excited other women were to donate and went out that evening and bought a purse to donate.
I need to be a part of that.
Yes. I mean, it's just but I cried because, and what we're talking about, there was a conference and everyone was invited to bring a handbag that was filled with essentials that women, that you and I would have in our handbag. And just looking through those handbags and seeing, notes of support and women who put their business cards in it because they wanted our clients to be able to have someone to reach out to. And, there'd be a little snack in there. There would be a little journal. There would be a really cool ink pen or something but the amount of love that I felt through those handbags, something as simple as just, my goodness, how many do we have, and being able to just say, okay, I'm going to donate this one. But the love that was poured into those was just a little bit overwhelming.
That's good.
But it was incredible.
Yeah, that was a great initiative.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. It's been a pleasure learning about you and your journey, and thank you for being on my podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Dress for Success.
Thank
that
you.
mobile unit just sounds really, really cool.
There are a couple affiliates that do really neat ones.
Yeah.
They've transformed RVs. They've transformed all kinds of things into these, mobile units, and it's just like a fitting room that you can drive around, a boutique on wheels that you can drive around.
It's really cool.
Really neat. Really neat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you thinking about starting a new nonprofit organization? Are you with an organization now and would like to take it to the next level? Are you on a board or committee of a nonprofit and want to make sure that you're being effective? Then I have the answer for you. My new book, Maximizing Impact: Success Strategies for Dynamic Nonprofits. I wrote this book to share my journey and the secrets of my success. Learn the essentials of designing and implementing a program, finding money for that program, evaluating that program to make sure that you're making an impact, and so much more. Maximizing Impact: Success Strategies for Dynamic Nonprofits by me, Dr. Michelle Foster. Be inspired, be informed, and access invaluable resources. Get your copy today.